Hey fam, what's going on? This is Raul from QBN Kennel. Make sure you do this, then do that. That way we could get on topic and get right into it. So real quick today, what is the topic? The topic is what is outcrossing, what is line breeding, what is inbreeding. Also, let's talk about size and how overrated it really is. So let me start just real quick giving you a roundup on what an outcross is. An outcross is basically when you have a dog in one particular bloodline and you're outcrossing him or breeding him outside of his bloodline to another bloodline. This can bring some benefits. One of the benefits that it brings is it doesn't allow your blood to become too pure. Now you would want to think, why is it that you wouldn't want your blood to be so, so pure or so concentrated? Well, the reason behind that is the way nature has set itself up. Whenever the blood becomes too pure, literally you start getting smaller litters. The dogs start becoming smaller and their deformities start becoming actually bigger. What do I mean by that? Well, there's two types of pretty much genetic combinations. One is what is called homozygous, and the other one is called heterozygous. And I'm not getting it too scientific, but I'm gonna try to keep it as basic as possible. Homozygous is when you got basically two DNA strands or two alleles or two combinations that pretty much match up identically. Okay, when that happens, you're either gonna get too much of one thing or too little of it. Okay, we'll get into that here in a minute. The heterozygous is when you have one dog that has one particular strand, okay, or on that one particular allele, and you have one that has a different one. It could be either shorter, longer, whatever the genetic expression that it may be. It's just different than the other. Okay. Now, like I said, the benefits to that is if you see that your blood is going too tight, you see your dogs start coming out a little bit smaller, you start cranking out these unwanted traits or even exaggerated forms of them, you definitely want to outcross to dilute that blood a little bit, bring in some of the good traits, and then you could try line breeding again until you find yourself seeing that the genetics in your yard or your blood is too tight, too concentrated. Okay, so that's the part of outcrossing. The following part is line breeding, and this one is pretty much left up to interpretation. What do I mean by that? Well, line breeding for the most part is breeding dogs within the same bloodline or blood group. However, they're not as closely related as, say, a mother to a son, a father to a daughter. It's more like maybe an aunt to a nephew, an uncle to a niece. Also, you could go grandfather to granddaughter. As you can see, grandfather to granddaughter, there's a generation right there in the middle where the grandfather's DNA obviously has been diluted because one, it had to be mixed with the female that he was bred to, and then his son or daughter was bred to another dog. Therefore, grandfather can only have as much as 12.5, maybe even 25% of the DNA, depending how it was set up, but no more than that. And so that's what's considered line breeding. Some people want to include in that a half brother and a half sister can be considered line breeding. Again, I leave that up to your own interpretation. Some people consider that inbreeding, okay? And we'll get into inbreeding here in just a second. Inbreeding is basically when you have pretty much a father to a daughter, like I said, or a mother to a son. And the worst form of inbreeding that could ever occur, because the DNA is so closely related, would be a sister to a brother. Okay, you never want to do that. I think last time I checked, you run like a 12% chance of getting some really messed up abnormalities. So definitely you don't want to do that under any circumstance. Is inbreeding necessary, or what can you gain from inbreeding? let me go back. I'm sorry that I'm jumping around, but let me just go back because I missed something on line breeding. On line breeding, again, even though you're throwing grandfather to granddaughter or uncle to niece, you're locking in certain traits, certain things that you're looking for, that bloodline, that may correspond to that bloodline or to that blood group. When you go into inbreeding, remember the explanation I just gave of the homozygous gene and the heterozygous gene. Well, when you inbreed, both genes expressions are either going to be way too long or way too short, okay? And when you do that for just one gene combination, it may not be, you know, for one DNA strand combination, the effects are not going to be extraordinarily bad or good. But keep in mind, there's millions of them. And once you match them up, you're either going to get too much of something. It's going to be multiplied pretty much. It's either going to be multiplied by 0 and give you a minimum number, or it's going to be multiplied by itself and give you a ridiculously high number. Okay? So the trait would go, say you were trying to lock in a dog that had a nice rear that you liked, and that's the reason why you went ahead and did the inbreeding, because you, for whatever reason, you wanted to lock in the rear. Well, DNA is not localized to just one part of that dog's body. So true enough, you might get this amazing rear on the dog, but if you're matching up traits that may not be, you know, may be false or may not be the best traits, what ends up happening is you're going to have an exaggerated form of them. So say, for example, you have two dogs that are slight east-west, okay? And their brother, or their father and daughter, and you go ahead and breed them, okay? You might find yourself having some seriously weak pasterns, all depending if that particular allele or DNA strand, or combination, some people call as well, went right ahead and exaggerated itself to a maximum, to an exponential form. And that's one of the reasons why people tell you, unless you know what you're doing, do not inbreed, because you're either going to get too much or too little of. You ever seen a dog out of a litter, or dogs out of a litter that come out that are either too timid or too aggressive? Usually you're going to get that out of inbreeding, okay? You know, if your dog has a slight high rear and you put her with her dad who's got a slight high rear, or he's cockeyed and she's cockeyed, you're gonna get, or there's a very high likelihood that you're gonna get an exaggerated form of that. So that's the downside of inbreeding, is that pretty much all homozygous genes, the ones that are identical, are gonna be expressed exponentially, either way too much or too little of it, and therefore you're probably going to lock in some traits that you want, but you're probably going to get some traits that you don't want. So that's my in a nutshell. I'm not trying to get too technical, I'm trying to keep it nice and basic. So examples of like I said, examples of when you want to outcross. Okay, your blood is too tight, it's too concentrated. You start seeing your dogs, they go from looking amazing and powerful and this, that, and the other, and all of a sudden, you know, you get a batch that's got underbites or overbites that you never had before, and you're like, how could this happen? You know, I bred a half brother to a half sister. You know, why all of a sudden we're showing east-west? Why is this high rear now popping up? Or, you know, just some sort of exaggerated form, maybe even some health issues may arise. That's the time you want to go ahead and outcross. You want to outcross, you want to dilute that blood a little bit. Go ahead and bring in some good genes, and you know, pretty much if you want to go back into line breeding, you can, depending on what you see, what comes out. Okay? You got to see what comes out of it. You got to realize, fam, the bully game, and not just the bully game, the breeding game, I don't care what you're breeding, whether it's a cow, a dog, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's a genetic game. So you need to have at least a basis of genetics and what is a recessive and a dominant trait, for example. What is a dominant trait? Well, a dominant trait, I always like to use the two colors that dogs have, red and black. The dominant one between the two obviously is going to be red. I'm sorry, it's going to be black. And the recessive one is going to be red. Okay, now you have different variations of the black, and you have different variations of the red. Black diluted, if you dilute it enough, people start calling that color blue. It's really not blue, it's black diluted, okay? But it's almost like if you're playing, you're playing poker, but you've called, all black colors to be a joker or to be studs over the reds. So anytime that black is gonna meet that red, 9 times out of 10, that black is gonna trump, unless it's been diluted or even the dog has been mixed previously. Even though he's showing black, he's been mixed with a dog that is also red or has red DNA in it, and he's carrying a passive gene. All a passive gene is, okay, the way I think about it is the easiest way I figure it is, think of a car, okay, and the car is red on the outside, okay, but there's somebody sitting on the inside with a red shirt, okay? Bottom line, it's inside of him. It's just not, the car is still black, but the red is there. So when you match them up to a red dog, you may still get a litter, say, of 10, where you have 8 dogs that are black, but you're still gonna get 2 or 3 that are gonna be red, okay? Or show red, maybe even brindle, that sort of thing. Now, I was being asked today, like, what would be the trait that I think is the most overrated? And I started thinking about it, and then I started laughing because honestly, I didn't even have to think about it. I don't know why it didn't occur to me earlier. Size. Size is the most overrated trait out here, at least in my opinion, okay? This is just solely QBN Kennel's opinion. Why is that? Because size is one of those things that you could pretty much breed to and get on a consistent basis. If you're breeding to a bigger dog, you're gonna get a bigger dog, okay? Why do I feel that it's overrated? Because I think that people want to build these skyscrapers, okay, and they're not busy understanding that you got to have a solid base. That you want to square those feet up first. You want to have a correct front. You want to make sure you don't have an overbite or an underbite. You want to make sure you don't have high rear to go along with it. You want to make sure your rear angulations are where they are. You want to make sure that the chest levels where the elbows are not sticking out. Okay, all these little tidbits, all these little pieces that I just mentioned, okay, they all have varying degrees of difficulty to fix, okay? But honestly, gaining size is, I would dare to say, one of the easier things to get. It really is. So instead of, right off from the gate, just breeding to a bigger dog and being able to sit there and brag that you have a 3-month-old pup that's 100 pounds, the problem you're gonna have is when that pup reaches adulthood and he can't really run, or he's got breathing issues, or he's walking funny, or his rear's up where his ears are at, or dude's walking around like Charlie Chaplin, then now you're going to start trying to put out those fires. One thing I've read and I've learned quite a bit is the more when it comes to breeding, subtraction will always trump addition. So if you can deter or not breed into something that you're going to bring to your program and is going to be a problem, that's a bigger plus than going ahead and breeding to it. So I'll give you a perfect example. Say I had a pocket and I wanted to breed at XL size, and there's a male or a female that I'm going to be breeding to, and that particular dog has East-West, but my dog doesn't have East-West. Now, true enough, my dog is going to fix some of the East-West, if not all of the East-West depending on the blood concentration and all that other good stuff that we just talked about. The problem that you're going to have, though, is like I told you earlier, the car is going to be painted with fixed east west. You know, the front is going to be correct. It's not going to have east west, but there's going to be a passenger inside with it. You see what I'm saying? And even though it didn't come up right now, and you're seeing a car that has no east west and everything looks honky dory, there's still a passenger in there that has it. Okay, and it might start causing you issues in your second or third generation, rather than seeing it immediately in your first. So that's why it's important when you start to try to start as conformed as possible. Once you get to the second generation, you know, and some will even argue the third and fourth, then you could really start looking for size. Your blood is now tight, you've locked in the attributes that you want. You know, now you're able to go into a bigger dog, especially one that was bred on an outcross. Okay, because the thing about dogs that are being bred on an outcross is they usually flourish. They usually blossom. Whenever you get all these heterozygous genes, they're gonna blossom, they're gonna look great. But that doesn't mean the blood is necessarily tight. Now, I'm not gonna get too far into it, but I'm just gonna say, when you're reading pedigree, okay, I see some people when they go to read pedigrees, they're just looking for 2 or 3 big names and they're happy. Well, I'm gonna give you another little tidbit to follow. Whenever you're reading pedigrees, you want to see how many times that particular dog showed up on the lineage. Okay, listen to me. You got dog, his name is Apollo, for example, and Apollo shows up in 4th generation, he shows up in 3rd generation, okay, and then he shows up in 1st generation, right before your dog's born. So Apollo is your dog's dad, granddad, and great-granddad, okay? And you're all happy about Apollo. Apollo's the greatest thing since sliced bread. What I suggest is make sure you take a look at Apollo, and don't just look at the glamour shots that the breeder wants to show you on Facebook, okay? You really want to see videos, you want to see Apollo moving, and if you can, look at him and be as critical of him as you can. Because if he's looking slight east-west, what do you think has happened to that bloodline if Apollo now appears on it as the great-grandfather, the grandfather, and now the father? It's almost as if though Apollo's breeding to himself. That's not the case, because obviously he's breeding to a female. But my point is, his genetic traits have been so locked in, okay, that if you're seeing something there that is that the dog has, it's a fault that's coming up off of the dog, and you're getting a dog off of that, you know, you're pretty much gonna have a hard time getting rid of that east-west. You know, I get asked all the time, you know, how do I fix east-west? Well, you know, one answer doesn't answer all, because it comes down to many factors. Main factor is how many times is the offending dog, or the dog that has brought east-west to the table, how many times has the dog been inbred or line bred? How tight is his blood, essentially? That's where we want to get to. And then also, the female that he's going to be bred to, how tight is her blood? Okay? So like I told you earlier, all right, let's talk about concentrations here real quick, just to give you an idea. So you have a dog that has east-west, but he was bred on an outcross, and one of his 2 parents is perfectly correct, but the other one isn't. And you're going to be breeding to a dog that has been line bred, okay, and they have a straight front. Okay, more than likely, that's the type of breeding you want to get into, because more than likely, if your dog does not have that, the dog that has east-west does not show up 3 or 4 times in his lineage, in other words, those traits haven't been so locked in, then more than likely the fact that his, you know, one of his parents had a straight front, and on this side you have a dog that has been line bred, has more concentrated blood, has a straight front, more than likely you're going to be getting a good 3 or 4 pups out of that litter that should be correct. Now again, fam, I'm making this as simple as possible. It could get really, really complicated. And sometimes, because you're dealing with percentages, sometimes you're looking to get 25% of something, but you only got 15. And then you're over here scratching your head and wondering why. Well, the why is very simple. You're dealing with percentages. You're not going to deal with a definite. So just because 25% of something, just because you should get up to 25% of something, doesn't mean you're going to get 25%. You may only get 12.5% this time around. Maybe next time, instead of 25%, you get 32. It's just the way it goes. And so this is how it works. Again, you have outcrossing, which typically is going to dilute blood. You have line breeding, which is going to pretty much keep the general traits of that bloodline within, okay, within that breeding, and yet you're not making it tight enough where you immediately have to outcross like you would say in inbreeding. Inbreeding, like I said, is going to maximize the expression of the homozygous genes, the genes that match. They're going to be expressed. They're going to be overly exaggerated. So, you know, if you're trying to lock in a perfect front, you know, you might end up with 6 other things that weren't there to begin with. You locked in the front, but now you're dealing with 6 other things that you weren't necessarily wanting to deal with. And like I had said earlier, as far as size is concerned, size is one of the easiest things to fix, fam. It really is. And you know, 9 times out of 10, when people are starting out, the very first thing they want to go after is size, because I get it. It impresses people, you know. And a lot of people that are just getting into breeding and haven't really dealt with issues and gone through all these other things that people that have been doing it for a while know. They're trying to go in for either the quick fix or the quick impression. So they're looking for size. But honestly, size is just one of those things that once you got your stuff right and you got your blood concentration where you want it, you could then go for size, and you're going to notice how nicely and correct that size is going to look on that perfect box you just made. But you know, if that box is crooked and you want to add size to it from day one, like I said earlier, subtraction is worth more than addition. So don't bring into your yard a crooked box. Okay, I don't care how big or how big a ribbon it has on it. I don't care how much people are applauding behind it. Don't bring that into your yard, because then it's going to be a lot harder for you to get rid of it. All right, fam? So, hey, do me a favor, just real quick. If there's a particular topic or anything you want me to talk about, just go ahead and leave it in the comments section. If you feel that I said something. All right, fam, let me just give you a quick explanation on tries. I had somebody asking me today, and I told them I'd go ahead and put this on the video. So real quick, if you have a dog that's a tri, okay, and he's got the TriCarrier gene, all that is the tan lines that the dogs have over their eyebrows, over here under their cheeks, and down to their legs, and or not even paws, but down to their legs. It gives them the look of having 3 colors. It's usually white, the base color, and then the tan lines. So essentially, you have a dog that has the tri gene, and you have a dog that doesn't have a tri gene. Now, this dog also doesn't have a TriCarrier. What's a TriCarrier? Well, the TriCarrier, like I said earlier, think of a car that is not a tri. It's painted non-tri, but inside it's got a passenger, okay, that's wearing a tri t-shirt. Let me put it that way. In this case, this car does not have a passenger in it and is a non-tri car. So pretty much when these two mix, you're now going to have every single puppy in that particular litter be a TriCarrier. So now you got that car that's driving, and there's a passenger inside that's wearing a TriCarrier shirt. Why is that important? Well, if you want to produce tri dogs, okay, you must have one of two things, and that's either a TriCarrier that is going to be bred to another TriCarrier or to a tri dog, or a tri dog being bred to a TriCarrier or another tri dog. Who's being bred to who changes the percentages of everything. Now, obviously, a tri dog with another tri dog is going to give you 100% of the litter being tri, okay? A tri dog to a TriCarrier should give you 25% of the dogs, or up to 25% of the dogs should be tris. So if you're looking at 10 pups, anywhere between 2 or 3 are going to be tri, okay? That should be a reasonable average. You may only have 1. You're lucky if you got 4, okay? And then if you have a TriCarrier with another TriCarrier, I believe it's half of that. I could be wrong, but you're looking at somewhere around 10% possibility of having a tri. And obviously all the pups will continue being TriCarriers. So out of 10 pups, you're looking at 1. You're lucky if you have 2. So I hope I kind of water down the whole tri thing. Again, you shouldn't be breeding for colors, but if you happen to have a dog that is 100% correct and is a tri, and you want to go ahead and breed them and you're trying to figure out your percentages, you could always go into Google and type in TriCarrier gene, I think, American Bully chart. And there's a chart there. I don't know who posted it. I definitely don't want to take credit for it. But the best part about it is the percentages are there. My numbers may be wrong, but if I'm trying to give you the numbers based on memory from seeing that particular chart. So I hope I've answered your question. Again, if you have anything else that you want us to touch up on, if there's a particular topic or you want to correct me on anything I said, go ahead and drop down some comments. Let me know how we did. All right, fam, this has been QBN. See you on the next one.